Have you ever felt lost in the whirlwind of life's decisions and challenges? As if you were sailing aimlessly on a stormy sea without a reliable captain to guide the boat? Most of us have been there seeking direction, yearning for a greater purpose, but getting lost in empty answers and illusory promises of the world. The truth is that without a true north, we end up at the mercy of the currents, carried away by influences that do not always have our well-being in mind. But what if there was a way to navigate these turbulent waters with confidence, knowing that the supreme captain is in charge? This is the provocation that few dare to exploit. We live in an age that glorifies self-control, where we are bombarded by messages that encourage us to follow only our desires and impulses. But are we really ready to face the storms of life alone? When we recognize that God is the only reliable captain to guide our lives, everything changes. He who possesses absolute sovereignty and infinite wisdom invites us to let go of the helm and trust that He knows the best way. It is not about losing control, but about trusting in the authority that sees beyond our limitations. Imagine being able to wake up every day with the certainty that no matter what happens, you're sailing toward the purpose that really matters. Sounds almost unbelievable, doesn't it? But that is the promise of a life that surrenders to God's authority. And if you're tired of fighting the current, it might be time to reevaluate who's really in charge of your boat. Come and discover what it means to sail confidently under the authority of the ultimate captain. Recognizing God's authority is like discovering a lost map in the midst of chaos. In a world where so many voices compete for our attention, it's easy to get lost in the jumble of ideas and concepts. But when you put God at the center, something extraordinary happens. Everything begins to make sense. It's like adjusting the focus of a lens that was blurry. Suddenly, priorities align, and we find a purpose that goes beyond what the world offers. God's authority gives us the direction and clarity we so much seek. It is intriguing how human beings, in their constant search for control and security, often neglect divine sovereignty. Imagine someone trying to navigate a rough sea without an experienced captain. This is what many do when they try to guide their lives without acknowledging God's authority. When, in fact, by submitting to Him, we discover a path of peace and purpose that transcends any human understanding. This reminds us that, in the face of uncertainty, there is an authority that knows what is best for each of us. The life of those who recognize this divine authority is not without challenges, but there is a notable difference in how these challenges are faced. Those who walk under God's guidance know that every obstacle is an opportunity for growth and transformation. It is like a craftsman who sees a rough stone and already imagines the final sculpture. In the same way, God sees beyond our limitations and molds us into something greater, and that prepares us to understand, in the next step, the depth of God's sovereignty and how that sovereignty impacts our lives in unimaginable ways. God's sovereignty is a concept that, while vast and profound, can be summed up in a powerful truth. He is the absolute Lord over everything and everyone. Nothing escapes His control, and nothing happens without His consent. To many, this may sound like a distant idea, but by understanding God's sovereignty, we realize that it is an unshakable foundation for our lives. Imagine someone crossing a desert not knowing if they will find water, but knowing that there is a hidden spring ahead. God's sovereignty is this certainty, this assurance that despite adversity, He is guiding every step. God's government is marked by justice, power, and wisdom. He not only observes the world from afar, but is intimately involved in every detail. In a world where justice often seems to fail, God's sovereignty is a reminder that there is a greater purpose that we do not yet fully understand. For those who face injustice and hardship, this sovereignty is not a cause for fear, but for comfort. To know that God rules wisely is to know that there is a higher plan at work, even when everything around you seems out of control. Accepting God's sovereignty means trusting that He knows best, even when the path seems confusing or painful. Sometimes we think we have the answers, but really, we're just seeing a small part of the picture. Like a child who wants to cross a busy street without understanding the danger, we need a Father who sees beyond. And that's where divine sovereignty challenges us to trust, to surrender, to let Him guide us with His infinite wisdom. And so, we are led to reflect on the impact that this authority has on the Christian life, paving the way for the next step of our journey. Living under God's authority is like carrying a map that always points to true north. In the midst of the distractions and temptations of the world, divine authority serves as a compass that keeps us on track. When someone decides to submit their decisions to God, from the small daily choices to the great crossroads of life, they start to see things differently. Priorities change. What once seemed essential can lose its value, and what seemed insignificant takes on new meaning. This realignment transforms our relationships, our goals, and even our way of facing difficulties. God's authority also shapes the way we deal with suffering. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" the one who lives under God's authority asks, "What does God want to teach me through this?" It is an invitation to see trials as opportunities for growth and not as punishments. Just as a blacksmith uses fire to shape metal, God uses life's challenges to shape our character, prepare us for greater purposes, and transform us into better versions of ourselves. This perspective changes everything. Instead of just surviving challenges, we are encouraged to grow through them. When God's authority is the center of our lives, we not only find purpose but also direction. Decisions that once seemed daunting become clearer, for we are no longer acting on our fears or selfish desires, but according to the will of a God who sees beyond what we see. This brings a peace that surpasses all understanding, a confidence that we are on the right path. And it is this trust that leads us to face the challenges of completely submitting to this authority, which will be explored more deeply below. Submitting to God's authority is not an easy path. In fact, it is one of the greatest challenges a Christian can face. Pride is often the first obstacle. Human beings have a natural inclination to want to control their own life, to believe that they know what is best for themselves. However, this self-sufficiency is a dangerous illusion. It is like a sailor who tries to navigate without a compass in the midst of a storm, believing that his own intuition will lead him to a safe harbor. Recognizing that it is necessary to give the helm to God is an act of humility that challenges our pride. Another significant challenge is fear. The idea of putting everything into God's hands can be daunting. What if He leads us down a path we don't want, or asks us to abandon something that is dear to us? These questions echo in the minds of those who struggle with total submission. It's like standing on the edge of a cliff, hesitating to jump, even though you know there's a parachute on your back. Trust in God's goodness and purpose is the key to overcoming this fear. But that trust is not always easy to cultivate in a world that preaches self-sufficiency and immediacy. Cultural influences also play a crucial role in this challenge. We live in a society that values autonomy and personal freedom above all else. The idea of submitting to the authority of a higher being may seem antiquated or even absurd to many. However, for those who understand God's character, this submission is not a loss of freedom, but a path to true freedom. It is a process of unlearning what the world teaches us and relearning to trust in a God who is sovereign and good. And it is from this understanding that we begin to see the rewards of this submission, which we will discuss below. Submission to God's authority may seem, at first glance, to be a renunciation. But in fact, it is a path to innumerable rewards. One of the greatest blessings that come from this surrender is peace that surpasses all understanding. When we stop fighting against God's will and begin to trust in God's plan, a deep serenity invades our heart. It is like a traveler who, after a long time of getting lost, finally finds a reliable guide. The security of being in the hands of those who know the way transforms the way we deal with the anxieties and worries of everyday life. In addition to peace, submission to God brings a deep sense of purpose. Many people spend their lives searching for meaning, chasing goals that seem important, but that deep down do not satisfy. However, by submitting to divine authority, we begin to see our lives through a new lens, the lens of eternal purpose. Every step, every decision, every relationship is aligned with something much bigger than ourselves. It's like finding the missing piece of a puzzle. Suddenly, everything makes sense and fits. This clarity of purpose gives us direction and motivation to keep moving forward, even in the most difficult times. Finally, there is the promise of spiritual growth and divine protection. Those who submit to God become like trees planted by streams of water, bearing fruit in the right season and whose leaves do not wither. Spiritual growth is inevitable for those who place themselves under the guidance of the Creator as He cares, prunes, and strengthens. And with this growth comes protection, a certainty that despite the storms, we are not helpless. And this ongoing journey of faith leads us to reflect on the need for total and constant submission, which we will explore below. Submission to God's authority is not a one-time event, but an ongoing, daily, and intentional process. Imagine the Christian life as a constant walk on rough terrain. It is not enough to take a step of faith and then stop. It is necessary to continue the journey day after day, trusting that God is guiding every step. This continuous surrender is what ensures that we are aligned with the divine will, even when the paths seem challenging. Each morning, God's invitation is for us to renew our resolve to follow Him, acknowledging His authority over every area of our lives. Many Christians understand the importance of submission, but fail to apply it consistently. Life has a way of distracting us, and before we know it, we're trying to take control again. That is why submission needs to be a daily and deliberate practice. Just as a musician tunes his instrument before each performance, we need to tune our hearts and minds every day so that they are in harmony with God. And that translates into practical actions, taking time for prayer, studying the Word, and reaching out to the faith community for support and encouragement. Continued submission also means accepting that we won't always see the full picture. Often, God asks us to take a step without revealing the final destination. This can be disconcerting, but this is where true faith is tested and strengthened. It's like a father who holds his child's hand and asks to trust, even when the road ahead is unfamiliar. This total and ongoing trust is the key to experiencing the true freedom that comes from being fully in God's hands. And from this surrender, we are called to reflect and invite others to join this journey of faith. This is an invitation to a journey of transformation, a call to look inward and reflect on one's own life. It's time to stop and ask, am I really living under God's authority? It is a challenging but necessary question for those who wish to live a full and meaningful life. Recognizing where we are and where we need to be is the first step. Just like someone who realizes they were heading in the wrong direction and decides to get back on the right path, we all have the chance to realign our steps with God's will, and that starts with a simple act of reflection. Reflecting, however, is not enough. True transformation requires action, and this is the time to act. Open the Bible, dedicate time to prayer, talk to others who are also on this journey, and seek God's wisdom. Share this message with friends, family, and those you love, because we all need to remember that we are on this journey together. Engaging in the community of faith is critical for spiritual growth, and God uses these connections to strengthen and guide us. It is like a fire that is kept burning when all the embers are close to each other. This invitation is for a radical change of life, a total surrender to God's purpose and sovereignty. It's not just about knowing or understanding, but about living that reality every day. What are you going to do with what you've just learned? Will you just keep it in the back of your mind or turn it into a lifestyle? The choice is yours. And remember, there's an adventure waiting for you, a life of peace, purpose, and true freedom that's only possible under God's authority. So, how about getting started today? Now that you know the transformative power of living under God's authority, what will you do with that knowledge? Will you continue to try to navigate the storms of life alone, or will you hand over the helm to the captain who knows fate better than anyone? Reflect deeply on this. Is it time to let go of pride, overcome fear, and surrender completely to the one who has the perfect plan for your life? The decision is yours, but the rewards of a God-led life are unparalleled. What prevents you from experiencing that freedom today? Is it doubt, distrust, or perhaps the influences around you that say otherwise? Challenge those voices. True transformation begins when you decide to take the first step, to trust, deliver, and live the purpose for which you were created. And as you do so, share that journey with others. Inspire, encourage, and strengthen your faith. After all, we all need a captain who knows what he's doing. If this message resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and continue learning how to live under God's authority. Let's go on this journey of faith together, discovering more about what it means to live a life of peace, purpose, and trust. What are you waiting for? The next step is up to you.